Football is finally back because I've been bopping around the early part of this week in an unusually happy mood, and I don't know whether it's because I'm taking my multivitamins before I go to bed or because the NFL is back. It's probably because the NFL is back. Welcome to the AV Club. Craig Rigdon is not with us. He's too busy in Florida enjoying himself on his holidays, and myself and Ben Costello are here. Ben, how are things?
Things are good. Football is back. Things couldn't be better.
Things could not be better. What do you reckon Craig is doing right now? I had the image in my head of him going to some sort of carousel in Disneyland, but it being like a New York Giants quarterback carousel. It goes from like Jameis Winston to Jackson Dart back to Russell Wilson again, because that first performance, there's already Brian Dale was already coming out like defending Russell Wilson as the quarterback. Like, you're explaining you're losing, man.
I think it has nothing to do with the NFL. I think he's currently on. I think Florida as a whole is on a 3-day bender at the minute. From their 70 burger on Saturday, so I'd say he's still partying with the locals.
Well, Florida State's on a bender. Florida University, which we'll talk about that in a second. Firstly, before we get into the podcast, you might notice, our YouTube viewers might notice a little logo in the top corner, and our podcast listeners might notice in the show title that we're announcing that this weekly slot, the AV Club, is sponsored by the TapHouse Bar and Kitchen in Ranelagh, on the south side of Dublin. I was really happy to be there on Sunday to watch a bit of RedZone. Shout out to some of the guys who were there. I have a little menu here, by the way, because they've announced TapHouse RedZone. You can see there's our little logo in association with the Irish NFL show. You'd like this, Ben. There's a good selection. There's chicken wings, but you can have either the Texas barbecue sauce or the extra hot Nashville sauce. And a bit like the Houston Oilers, I started on Texas and ended up in Nashville, and it was really, really spicy. So
I have to say, you sent me pictures of some of the food last night while you were watching the game, and it made me hungry. I did immediately go throw on food because of it, but yours looks much better. So looking forward to getting down there and getting some grub in and getting while football's on.
Yeah, it was class. You go up there and it's really like an American sports bar, and that they have the TVs set up behind the bar. So you're watching like RedZone on one, the Jets doing what the Jets do on the other. So no, it's a great spot, and we're looking forward. We will be doing some events, a bits and pieces like that over the course of the year. And as well as that, because you're a Heineken drinker, right? You're one of these boring guys, unlike the beer hipsters.
It can't go wrong, right?
Well, see, Heineken is on the list, but like for the beer hipster, I said with the beer enjoyer, beer hipster like me, there's plenty on there as well. So
the beer connoisseur, Shane.
Yes, well, I don't know. You know, some people are really like arsey about coffee. I could be like that with beer sometimes. I do wear a lot of checked shirts. So the Tap House which is very close to Ranelagh Lewis stop, by the way, for anybody who's driving in, park and ride, or is near the Green Line Lewis. It's super, super handy to get to that way. We're looking forward to doing some stuff. Let's talk football, shall we? And I want to ask you a question. Have you ever wanted to spend your own money to get rid of somebody out of a sporting organization or somebody that you're a fan of?
I'm sure I have. You probably have to be a bit more specific.
You've never like hated a head coach or a quarterback or something like that and said, I'm paying for my own money just to get out of here.
I did have moments of that last night when I was like, surely we could have splurged and kept Geno Smith. Surely this is not how my life is going to go watching Sam Darnold. We'll get into it, but are you trying to allude to something there?
Well, it's funny because you were saying last week how Kalen DeBoer, the head coach of Alabama, is on the SEC hot seat. And apparently there was a massive lottery prize in Alabama last week. And somebody went out, I have a clip here, somebody went out and asked a woman, if you won the $100 million plus prize, what would you do with the money?
I'll tell you exactly what I'd do with the first $70 million. I'd pay off Kalen DeBoer and get him the heck out of the University of Alabama. And then I'd take whatever else it took to get rid of the AD. I'd give my church money. I don't know how much of what I'd have, after I paid my taxes, but I'm sure I'd have plenty with this kind of deal. But I know I'm not going to win. I just hope I win some scratch-offs.
I did call it in our first episode. I said that Kalen DeBoer's seat is very, very hot. Maybe not as hot as the seat down in the swamp, but I'm also very surprised in that video that she openly admitted to paying her taxes. I'd be very surprised if that was the case with some Alabamians.
Well, I think with the lottery, the thing is when you win it, it's like they tell you, it's not like in Ireland, they tell you like you won $100 million and really you get like 60 because the tax you don't even get a chance to not pay the taxes. Now, Alabama did win 73-0 over Louisiana Monroe at the weekend, but they have a tougher task against Wisconsin this coming weekend. But I guess sorry, before we move on to Florida, my favorite part about that is like the first thing in our mind is I'm going to pay $70 million of my own cash to get rid of Kalen DeBoer, and after just like I suppose I'll give my church money. I don't know. I actually don't know how much money I'll have if I win this.
But just football, God, and beer in that order. So good to know that it rings through in all facets.
Yeah, when they tell you football means more in the South, at the SEC it means more. That she embodies that spirit, and I think I was very frustrated when I was watching. I had to stay up to do a bit of work for the Sport podcast on Saturday night, but I said that's no problem. I could stay up and watch a bit of Florida versus the South Florida Bulls. I like the Florida Gators. Before the season, I was kind of floating between a couple of SEC teams. I'm going to pick one of these to be my team now, and I'm a Tom Petty fan. I like the song. Won't back down. I was split between Florida, LSU, and Tennessee, who are all fierce rivals, oddly. But I picked Florida, and I was like, okay, I'll lock in now. I'll sit in, and because I followed them last year, and with the whole Billy Napier roller coaster, this should be a nice hand and win for them. But no, a player was spinning on the opposition. There was a lot of messy football, and in the end, the Florida Bulls came away victors in the swamp, and Florida had to pay South Florida $500,000 for the privilege. So. Talk us through this one because Billy Napier's seat is also looking pretty hot as well. We'll talk NFL later on, but let's get this one out of the way.
Let's get some college out of the way. Yeah, Billy Napier's seat is very hot. I think I think the noise is probably a lot louder because they're not blowing teams out 70-0, as you said. But Florida is just the eternal bridesmaid. I think I made that comment over the weekend. It's just there's always something with them, and it seems like it's never going to happen. The fact that they got beat by South Florida, an unranked team, in week 2 just does not bode well at all for the rest of their season. Now I've looked; it bodes extremely well for South Florida, who are now ranked. I think they're ranked number 18.
18, yeah.
Which is led to a really good matchup this weekend versus Miami, versus the Hurricanes. So that's gonna what looked like just another game on the schedule now is turning out to be something we're probably going to tune into and have really good interest in. So there's two flip sides of every game. Florida are reeling, whereas South Florida are basking in their 2-0 wins against top 25 ranked teams. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big one. And what's really interesting is you look at Florida's schedule. They have to play at LSU, at Miami, at home to Texas, at Texas A&M. What else have they got afterwards? Mississippi State, the Florida-Georgia game, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Florida State. None of those are easy games. So I don't know. I think by choosing unwisely, I'm locking myself into a similar roller coaster that many of Kieran Boyle's friends are locking themselves into. Let's there's a couple of other college talk points we might come back to at the end, Ben, but let's talk more about staying on the theme of the South actually, because one of the big things you said last week and we sort of disagreed on is the positioning of the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC South pecking order. And look, the first test we had of that was the battle they played yesterday at the 6 o'clock window. What was one of the really more entertaining games between the Bucs and the Falcons. Slightly messy from the point of view of special teams. Interesting, Baker Mayfield came out of this with 3 passing touchdowns, but he only 167 yards. Mm-hmm. He incompleted as many passes he completed nearly. Whereas Michael Penix got nearly 300 yards, ran in for a touchdown, looked fairly impressive. He was attempting a lot of passes, in fairness to him. I think he had to carry more weight than Baker did, for instance. But in the end, in a chaotic game, which always gets thrown up between these rivals, the Buccaneers come out victors, but I think for those who back the Falcons, and I think myself and yourself are going to get a chance to see the Falcons up close in Germany later this year, you could feel confident that they mightn't be as far behind the Buccaneers as some of us thought they were.
So just to clarify for our YouTube audience, I am a Seahawks fan, but this is not a Falcons jumper. This is a London Games jumper with the Jags on the bottom there. So I am not biased in what I say about the Falcons. I am high on them.
You still chose to wear that to this thing, though. So I'm going to make sure there's a Falcons logo.
Yeah, look, it was a really, really great game. Not in terms of, as you said, clean football, but as in terms of a game to watch and to keep you on the edge of your seat the whole way through, oh my god, what a game! I couldn't believe what I was watching at some points, and I was really surprised. I just said you laid out the Penix nearly 300 yards. Baker only had half that, but more TDs. It really showed you the difference in the two teams. The Bucs mightn't be as flashy. They mightn't be as they don't have as many weapons that you look at it with the Falcons, but they're more consistent and they are more experienced. They're a veteran team, so they make the plays count when they matter, and that seemed to really come across. Not to say that the Falcons didn't. I mean, when Penix started running the ball, I was genuinely scared for his life. I didn't know I wasn't familiar with his running game. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to when they play each other again later on in the season. I don't know what week that is, but certainly going to have a bookmarked as a game. I mean, I always thought this, but I think the NFC South is going to come down to the last week or two in terms of who takes that division. I don't think anyone's going to run away with it, same as it was last year. This is just the first bout in that battle to claim top spot, because I don't think the other two teams are going to be in that argument.
No, my faith in the Panthers is definitely thrown back at me yesterday when they didn't really show up against Jacksonville, the other team on your hoodie. And you're right. I mean, we always said the NFC South is really going to be between these two teams, and they play against each other, I think, in a primetime game in December, which is a nice kind of rematch for them to go into in Florida. But I think to your point, Penix was an interesting character. We saw him run. We saw him take more risks. He was forced to do a lot of passes. Bijan Robinson, I don't think, gave him a whole lot of running game to work throughout the game. So is that how the Falcons, you think, should be trying to negotiate with Penix a little bit more? Is that if he gets a chance to run it a bit more and to be a bit more adventurous in that? Because we've seen that with a couple of times with a couple of quarterbacks that you could become a Justin Fields in Chicago type and end up running for your life and be crap at everything else. Or you could become a proper dual threat like Jalen Hurts. There's a weird balance there to be struck, I think, for Raheem Mostert and co.
So when I was looking back at the stats, and all I could take away from that game was, wow, the Penix runs at the end were really important to where they got to in the end. And then I was surprised he only had like 20 rushing yards. So he actually didn't run that much, just did in the most important moments possible. You're right, the running game was not there. I think Bijan had 25 rushing yards. I think Algier had the same, something like that, which is not like what you want. And the passing yards, out the wazoo. I mean, they had 4 receivers over 50 yards. Bijan led that. I think the big touchdown at the start kind of inflated those stats, but yards are yards. I don't think they should. In no way are they going to lean on Penix's running ability. It's nice to see that that's there, and that if he wants to take a game into his hands, he's more than willing to do that. I don't think you see that in quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, a lot these days that aren't predominantly runners. Obviously, you have Jaden Daniels and stuff like that who are a pure dual threat, like you have to compensate. But for the guys who aren't really that much of a threat with their legs, they don't generally flash it. So it's good to see that it's there. Keep that in the back pocket. I think they're going to be looking to get that run game going, especially with the Drake London injury. I'm not sure if he's going to miss any games or how much that's going to linger, but you would think they're going to focus back on the rushing attack. But great shout out to the Buccaneers defense for holding that rushing attack in check. And I think, a lot of people expected the Bucs to be good and to have this division. So they didn't really prove anything other than that they're in it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where they proved themselves to be game winners, if not game dominators, and that's the key difference between a lot of teams. There's a lot of flashy teams who just can't get the job done, like the Dolphins were a couple of years ago, and there's a lot of teams who aren't flashy but tend to get the job done. Let's talk about the Packers and the Lions, because again, one of the things I've been called out for is my crazy prediction that the Lions will not make the playoffs. Whether I'm convinced of that yet, I don't know. It's still week 1. The Packers had a fairly dominant game here against Detroit. There's no other way of saying it. It's going to take a little while for, I think, I'll be honest, I came out of this and I thought that the loss of the loss of defensive coordinator wasn't as hard to fix as the loss of Ben Johnson to Chicago. Chicago Vikings, by the way, Monday Night Football. Usually we record this on a Tuesday and we can react to that, but we're not doing that this week. We record this on Monday, but we will have some reaction to that game later on this week, so keep an eye out for that. But onto this game between the Packers and the Lions. Here's my overreaction for this week. I think we can really start talking about the Packers in the Super Bowl conversation. Like, you look at what the additions to have on defense, how they've managed many of the key parts of the game. Daniel Whelan, as well as a punter, is performing excellently. He's earned his contract rightly. But as well as that, and this is a point, and I'm happy to correct myself on this. One of my big fears is that Jordan Love gives the ball away too easy. Now, he got away with one. I think there was he gave away an interception and got called back for a penalty yesterday. But I think Colin Cowherd pointed out that in the last 6 or 7 games of last season, he didn't throw a pick. He didn't technically throw a pick in this one. Like, he's still the biggest question mark for me around the Packers in terms of how far they can go. But he's performing the playoffs. I was over in your house when we were watching the Packers demolish the Cowboys a couple of years ago. He can, like, there is history there. So I don't know. I was just supremely impressed by Green Bay.
I was going to force you to talk about this point because when we released our predictions across our socials and who was going to make the playoffs and who wasn't, I didn't even notice that you didn't have the Lions on there until one of the other guys pointed it out, and I thought, this man is crazy. No way. Whatever about, not winning the division, because it's an extremely tough division, and I think the games yesterday really proved that, and I think the games tonight are going to really prove that. But I thought you were crazy. I now see some validity to it, and I am scared for the loss of their 2 coordinators and how important that is, as well as the offensive line. Is it Frank Ragnow retired? That consistency at center is really important, and I drafted Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round of our fantasy football league, and that's putting some fear of God in me as well because he didn't perform that well. I'm not sure if that's down to how good the Packers were or how bad and unprepared the Lions were. I'm unsure.
I think there's one thing about the Lions is that because like Jared Goff, it's still at a very high completion percentage. I know he gave away the interception, but he completed 31 of his 39. He's still accurate. But the problem was, like, that offense just didn't get any space once they had the ball. And I get to your point. Is that all on the Packers defense as planning an absolutely fantastic game as they did, or is there something missing for the Lions offense? Because even like David Montgomery had 11 carries, he averaged less than roughly 2 yards per carry yesterday. Like that's not the swashbuckling Lions we had last year. I
was looking at the stats from the game last night, looking for anything that jumped out, and other than the sacks taken, which was 4-0, Goff went down to the ground 4 times, which is kind of what you expect when you trade for Micah Parsons.
Beautiful one from Micah Parsons in the 4th quarter, by the way. It was almost cinematic.
I did see someone compare it to a lioness chasing down a gazelle.
Have you seen the clip of Tom Grossi?
It's great. It's great. And I've been following Tom Grossi for a while, and it's great to see him as happy as he is. But that's Micah Parsons at like 50% because I don't think he played. I think he played 1 snap in the first quarter. So they're only going to install him more, and he's only going to get more familiar with that defense. So yeah, maybe this Packers defense and this Packers team as a whole is a serious threat to everybody in the NFC. Still a lot of season left to go. Again, same can be said for the Lions. A lot of season left to go. When you swap out coordinators like that, it does take time to get into some rhythm. Don't want to overreact, but yes, other than the 4 sacks taken, the stats were identical in terms of yards and kind of everything was identical. Just Green Bay made everything count, whereas the Lions messed up in the most important situations.
Yeah, which is generally what they didn't do last year, kind of what they did in the playoffs the last 2 years. It hasn't quite come out here. So I don't know. It's an interesting one to keep an eye on. Let's move on now to touch on the Seahawks and the Niners. And I know the guys are talking about it on Monday Night Show, available for you on Tuesday morning. But it's an interesting one for me because I still come away with very few conclusions from this result. For anybody who didn't see that, the Niners came out 17-13 victors. The Niners missed a couple of kicks early on, which sort of ruined some of their momentum. The Seahawks, I think, probably still waiting for Sam Darnold to sort of really kick into gear. Obviously, you're a Seahawks fan. You would have been watching it far closer than I. But the game where Brock Purdy was scored two touchdowns, intercepted twice. Christian McCaffrey's back doing what he does. He ended up receiving a lot of passes as well as taking the run, which is good to see. Ricky Pearsall getting a really big one, but I thought the cornerback play from Seattle was disappointing a couple of times. I'm not looking at this and panicking for the Seahawks. I'm not looking at this and saying, oh yeah, the Niners are back this year. But a result is a result, and going in against the 12s and getting the victory when they really should have a lot more points. Just the bad special teams hurt San Francisco in a big way. Like, they were the better team, to be fair to them, and the results shown that.
They absolutely deserve all the credit they get for winning the game last night. It was an absolute slugfest. Bit slow to watch at times, and I think that the score, that low score kind of tells you that. As a Seahawks fan, of course, I want to overreact, and I want to burn the building down, and I want to say the season's over already. But no, I'm not panicked at all. It's week one. These things happen. We could be the Dolphins. Things could always be out, and we pay Sam Darnold way less money. The main thing that stood out to me, and it's a good thing and a bad thing, it's a double-edged sword, is JSN. JSN was amazing last night. 124 yards, was the leading receiver on our team. That didn't have anything else going. The second most receiving yards was 15 yards by Cooper Kupp. The rushing game didn't get going. Kenneth Walker was bad. Zach Charbonnet was the leading rusher. At certain times, I was begging them to put Charbonnet in. I understand we have high hopes for Walker, but if it's not working, it's not working. Let's see what does. It's still early season. The defense, though, was amazing. Was really good and held that Niners D. Every time they picked off Brock Purdy was just a serene moment. So, and as for the Niners, consistency is consistency, and then they're extremely well. How do I get this up? They're extremely well versed. They're experienced. They know exactly what to do. Like the fact that they won this despite losing Kittle in the first early start to the game was a huge turning point. And I think both teams are gonna be kicking themselves at how they performed, and more so the Seahawks. I think that this was their game to lose after that injury went down, and they started to build up a lot of momentum. And that defense was playing so well. So again, same with Atlanta and the Buccaneers. I think we're going to be looking at their matchup later on in the year, and it could be a very important point for the NFC West if it's competitive.
Yeah, interesting one. Elsewhere in the NFC West, the Rams did run out victory against the Houston Texans. Matthew Stafford came up with a nice touchdown. That was a 14-9 game, but one where the Texans were, I think, it's funny. I don't know if you saw Ernie Adams on the Julian Edelman podcast a couple of years ago, but his big thing is that bad football kills you. The idea of bad snaps, bad discipline, your stupid mistakes at the wrong time. It killed Houston last night, and this is where my segue leads me to kind of kill the Patriots as well. And look, I'll be honest, I was in the bar when the TapHouse when the Patriots are playing against the Raiders, so I didn't get as close a look at it as I would have liked, and I haven't gone back and done the full sort of 40-minute tape. But the two things which have kind of come from me is that the Patriots still looked kind of in preseason mode. There was sloppiness. Drake May was a lot of times he took a snap and he was running, and there was no options for him. And a big problem with Drake May that he had last year, which is carried thus far, is that he doesn't have a go-to guy. Mm-hmm. There's so many quarterbacks in the league. They need a get out of jail card. You find your man and give it to him. And Drake doesn't have that yet. That's one of the big problems. Kayshon Boutte wasn't amazingly impressed with last year. Ended up being the sort of most targeted receiver Hunter Henry at tight end is still somebody he gives a lot to. Stephon Diggs didn't get a lot of yards after catch yesterday. I did like Trevion Henderson in terms of his running game. That was a decent enough start. He didn't get the ball a whole lot though. I think he only had 5 carries. So you have that, but on the flip side with the Raiders, I just have to say Geno Smith looked smooth and confident in what he is doing. And I know you've seen Geno a bit more than I have in the last couple of years. Obviously coming back into work with Pete Carroll. Like, it's funny when we talk about whether a team should draft and whether a team should trade. There's already a bit of second-year panic going on about Drake May and Bo Nix because, hey, it's week 1 and what else have we got to panic about? As you know, which I think the Bo Nix panic is probably a bit more legitimate than the Drake May panic. But in fairness to Geno, he just looks solid. 362 yards, completed 24 out of his 34. Did throw an interception. Ashton Genty as well had a lot of carries, but didn't get a whole lot back. But he did get a touchdown. There was a nice mix from Las Vegas, and in a sloppy game that was there to be won by whoever made the fewest mistakes, they just made fewer mistakes.
In being honest, I'm the same. I didn't really pay too much attention to this game. I saw the highlights. It was on RedZone. I didn't see what went on in the trenches. I saw Will Campbell, their first-round pick from LSU, kind of struggled a little bit at times. I think he gave up a sack, which was tough to see. He's got to learn the hard way.
Well, when I'm talking about bad football, there was a couple of penalties. Like there's a couple of times he was caught for what's the offense version of neutral zone infraction? What the hell? This is the weirdest mind brain. False start.
Yeah,
a couple of false start by Will Campbell, and you could tell he was very frustrated about that. Which again, compared to his preseason form when he was sort of on top of everything he had to be and was pushing, I think the NFL kind of got to him a bit yesterday, which takes time. But you're right. Like Will Campbell's performance was definitely a big takeaway from that one. You're like, oh, okay, this guy might need a couple of weeks. And missing Christian Gonzalez as well means that our cornerback room isn't great either. So luckily we get to play against Miami next week. But hey,
look, I think that whole team as a whole needs some weeks to get up to speed. They're a young team with a new head coach. They've not got all the talent in the world. They've not got very much expectations. I think a lot of people think they could be good, and that's still possible. As for Will Campbell, now is the time to learn and make those mistakes and get better, because I think not this year, but next year and the next however many years after this is the Patriots' year. If they overperform and end up as a wild card spot this year, will we be surprised? No, because they're the Patriots. But if they are picking in the top 10 again, will we be also surprised? No. And I don't think there's anything wrong with either of those outcomes for the Patriots, because, as you said, they're lacking at weapons and talent around. I mean, everything just looked difficult for the Patriots last night. Whereas, as you said, teams were getting bailed out by high-end talent. You have Christian McCaffrey catching passes all over the field. You have, even for ourselves, JSN going off. The Buccaneers drafted Mecca Abuka, scores 2 touchdowns. You know, they don't have anybody like that right now. So, yeah, it onwards and upwards on the week 2, as you said, and play a Miami team who has no belief. So you hope to pick up some experience there.
If we don't beat Miami, I'm going to go mental. I know we've a bad record in Miami, but if we can't beat that Miami team, there's something seriously wrong. But anyway, that's for next week's overreaction. Like if we're sitting here like next Tuesday, and Miami have won the game, I'm going to go ballistic. But that might be some good content. But I don't know. Have you seen, by the way, the new Kansas City Chiefs mascot, the new Irish mascot they have coming?
KCO Wolf. Yeah, I did.
I don't know. I think it's better to pronounce Casey, as in like the name Casey. I think
that makes way more sense.
But yeah, but the reason I'm saying to you is anybody might know I had the story in the Irish Independent today for anybody who might have seen it but didn't know where it came from because it may not have been marked properly. I had the story in the Irish Independent today that the Kansas City Chiefs, a member of their executive committee has said, and in a conversation I had with them last week, that they are interested and they want to put their hands to play a game in Ireland in 2026. But I'm just thinking about it more since it came out that in order for it to do it, because next year the AFC only play 8 home games instead of 9, and generally when your team has 9 home games, those are the teams that bring a game across the Atlantic. The Jags being the only real exception. So the only way for the Chiefs to if they really were going to play in Ireland in 2026, the most realistic way for them to do it would be against an NFC opponent. Their 3 road NFC opponents are an NFC South opponent, so that's to be determined. Probably the Buccaneers or the Falcons, depending on how each team finishes in their respective divisions. The LA Rams, but they're not going to host a game in Ireland because they're hosting a game in Melbourne next year. And the Seattle Seahawks, who we think had a bit of an interest in being the Steelers' opponent this year. The Vikings ended up being the Steelers' actual opponent. So Seahawks, Chiefs next year, anyone? Potentially? I don't know.
I can't go through this again. I really thought the Steelers were going to play them this year. That turned out not to be the case. We're getting a great matchup against the Vikings. I think whoever the Chiefs play, if they come here next year, it is going to – I mean, it already sold out this year. That's 600,000 people in the queue. But I think you're going to see even more than that with the Chiefs coming to play and their new target audience who that kind of travels the world and is there no matter where you go, whether it's Ireland or Australia or whatever. The Swifties are going to travel.
This is the thing, I've had 3 texts about it today, being like, "Oh my God, Taylor Swift's coming to Dublin." I'm like, "Hang on a second, Travis Kelce might be on the team next year. He might be retired by then." That's just,
I still think even if Travis isn't on the team, I still think you telling me that he's not going to be part of that team in some capacity and not be a high supporter of Patrick Mahomes and whatever they end up doing, especially if they travel to Ireland and play a game where they never played. Not to be too focused on the Taylor Swift part of that, but I was on the couch next to my partner, who is a extreme Swiftie for many years, and when they played the Chicago Bears that game, and they kind of announced to the world that this is happening. The household was rocking. We were constantly on the look, and I've never seen her walk glued to a football game more in my life. And I am all for that. Wherever household, whether it's daughters with fathers, whether it's, as I said, boyfriend, girlfriends watching the game, I am all for more people watching our game, because then it gets more games abroad. It gets more games in the season. We're probably looking at an 18-game season. I'm all for it. So all this negative stigmatism with the Chiefs and what they do, and I'm all for it.
That's a good point, and it was really interesting speaking to Lara Krug, who is the Chiefs executive vice president, speaking to us, that she wants the Chiefs to be the world's team. The way same way that the Cowboys are America's team, the Chiefs are the world's team. So, and they've done that. They've released new. This KCO Wolf is the Irish Wolf, because they have KC Wolf, which is their American mascot. Now we have KC Wolf, KC Wolfington, I think is the British version, and KC Wolfgang is the German version. So there's a whole family of wolves coming over. So I think it's a really exciting thing. I mean, the Chiefs, I think, are really starting to really understand what the modern market is and trying to get out to people. And look, they are by far the most successful outfit in American sports this decade. So why not try to make the most of it? And people love them. People love the red. People love the tomahawk chop. The stadium they play in is fantastic. So, and look, if they play a game in Ireland, whether they're a home team or the away team with Seattle Seahawks, who knows? It should be really good crack. So yeah, that's a really nice one. One final point on that one before I do go. A lot of people have been reacting to that on Twitter who are from the Kansas City area, and a lot of them are either giving out because, oh, this is terrible, they should be bringing more games abroad, or they're K-State fans, and some of them are like, oh, Ireland's class, and some are like, oh no, we're cursed because we shouldn't have lost that game to Iowa State. Don't bring another Kansas team out. So I don't know. It's interesting to see how that goes. I think that's it, Ben. Was there more college stuff you wanted to wrap up on, or anything else in the NFL weekend which caught you?
I think I was leaving it to the end, but I think we ended up touching on a lot of it. I mean, as I said, the matchups this weekend are maybe not as high profile as the last few weeks, but I think there's some interesting storylines are starting to build in college football. I mean, you have Texas that are going to go on and play another less than strong team. and it gives Arch Manning another opportunity to go out and be Arch Manning. So he's going to have another great game. People are going to keep saying that he's playing against low end competition, but he needs that. He needs that time, and he needs those reps, and he needs that confidence before he can go back in and be the prospect we all think. Again, South Florida versus Miami, going to be a great game. College football, I think, is more accessible this year for everybody.
Oh, yeah, we can get it for free on DAZN. It's great, and college game day too.
And I think you're seeing that now. More people are talking about it. More people are talking about it in particularly Ireland. Of course, we see that because we're here, but I think even the rest of Europe and stuff are starting to see it, and it's great to see. It's great to see.
It's good stuff. I think it's nice to have an extra thing on Saturday. And again, it's funny how much people, I think, misunderstand what's happening with what's happening with American football is that they always assume it's always on so late, but so much of it is at a very watchable hour. Most of the games in the NFL are on at 6 o'clock, and I was actually explaining that to most of the guys, some of the guys in the TapHouse, and most of my friends at work. So look, that's a big one. One final point in Florida, though, right? I laughed. I can't imagine what it's like to working in the PR department of the Florida Gators right now, because they've just announced that Billy Napier, who knows, under a hell of a lot of pressure, and I imagine if somebody won the Florida $100 million, they'd probably spend whatever to get rid of Billy Napier right now. That's the way people are feeling. They're announcing a new show. Football with Billy Napier will debut at 4 p.m. on the Florida Gators YouTube page. And they're doing like multiple episodes of like Billy Napier talking football. I can only imagine the YouTube comment section under that. It's going to be an absolute swamp. So, I don't know. Will
Billy Napier be tuning in to pay attention to football and eventually going to join us for the rest of the season, hopefully? Look, we could talk about Billy Napier and the Gators all day. They're a fun team to watch. They're a fun team to watch. Not particularly because of the great football, but there's always seems to be something. So looking forward to them and the rest of the college football season.
And the NFL season as well. We're looking forward to Thursday Night Football this week, which I think is the Packers playing against the help me out here. Who are the Packers playing against Thursday Night Football this week? The Commanders, of course.
Yes.
A rematch of sorts sometimes past. But for now, that's for this week's AV Club, which again, like I remind you, is brought to you by the TapHouse. Great place to watch RedZone every Sunday in the south side of Dublin. For now, Ben, thank you.
Thanks, Shane.